The Center for Journalism Ethics is proud to promote the high standards of journalism ethics, and we'd like to think this award is the torchbearer of that for this industry.
The University of Wisconsin changes lives, and so does the best journalism. We see that reflected in Anthony Shadid's work, the journalist for whom this award is named. He brought honesty and integrity to bear on some of the most difficult conflicts of our time, illuminating those affected with humanity and grace.
Our finalists are an absolute masterclass in the practices of journalism ethics.
So last year we reported on conditions for immigrant dairy workers in Wisconsin. We interviewed easily more than 120, 130 workers, all immigrants. And they feared the repercussions of talking to reporters about injuries at work, about deaths, about housing conditions, because they feared not just deportation, but also the more practical, immediate possibility of losing their jobs and losing their housing. We're both daughters of immigrants. We both grew up speaking Spanish, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing journalism not just about people, but for people that they could consume and see themselves in.
We surveyed our sources on how they would be able to read or listen to a story like ours. We hired audio producers to create a version in Spanish of the story that could be accessible through smartphone. Our design team created a physical booklet that we distributed in Latin American grocery stores throughout the state. We were able to produce work that the people it was about could really access and dig into and talk with us about and give us feedback on.
For this story, we traveled to Mexico to purchase pills from pharmacies to try to understand how widespread counterfeiting of pharmaceuticals is in Mexico. We purchased and tested over 100 pills from a variety of pharmacies and found that more than 2/3 contained illicit substances, including fentanyl and methamphetamine. We found that multiple American tourists had died as a result of these deadly pills. One of the biggest considerations was whether to name pharmacies or pharmacy employees explicitly in our reporting. We were concerned that doing so could expose them to unnecessary risk and potentially retaliation by cartels or the government. But on the flip side, we had to consider whether using their names and putting the names in the reporting could actually benefit the public enough that it outweighed these other concerns.
These stories are proof of the importance of journalism in our society. They alerted the public to a situation they didn't know about counterfeit drugs and the dangers they pose, and really pushed federal public health officials to put out advisories, push Mexican officials to actually start raids on pharmacies, and I think, in our hope, potentially has prevented more deaths from happening.
So this past year, I focused on the increasing number of underage Rohingya girls who are being trafficked from Myanmar and Bangladesh to Malaysia to marry much older men who frequently abuse them. The first challenge that I had was simply finding the girls. Because the husbands keep them locked up in their homes for most of the day, they have almost no contact with the outside world. The other challenge, though, was figuring out a way to interview them without their husbands finding out about it. I eventually found a Rohingya women's advocate in Malaysia who was herself a child bride and now campaigns against the practice. She has direct links to these girls. We journalists have been gifted with an enormous amount of power to expose atrocities and to hopefully right some wrongs. So we should wield that power wisely and make sure that we're writing the stories of those people who don't have the power to tell their stories themselves.
Our series of stories was about Hinds County, Mississippi, burying people in a pauper's field without any name attached to their graves, without telling their families. In some cases, we found families who not only did not know that their loved ones were being buried in a pauper's field, but had been actively searching for them as missing people and had no idea that Hinds County had their bodies or that they had buried their loved ones in this pauper's field. What we realized pretty quickly in this process of reporting out this series was that often we became in possession of documents about someone's death and burial before their families did. And so in order to approach these families about their experiences, we first had to contemplate how are we going to let them know what we know, answers to questions that they deserve to know beyond the journalistic process.
This series revealed a new child labor crisis in America. Almost 400,000 children have crossed the border on their own in the last 3 years, and a majority of them are ending up working full-time. They're working for big corporations, making Cheerios, Fruit of the Loom socks, Oreo cookies. They're getting hurt falling from 50-foot construction sites and getting their arms mangled in slaughterhouses. We produced a visual investigation about the lives of child roofers that used video that the children had themselves shot. We also gave kids a lot of editorial control over their portraits. So we asked them where they wanted to be shot, what they wanted to wear. A lot of them chose to pose in places where they felt proud, like church or schools. And it initially felt like a blurring of a boundary between reporter and subject. But I think actually this was really important to being respectful to the people who we were reporting on and helping the kids who took these big risks feel like they also had a role in how they were portrayed. One thing that always inspires me about Anthony Shadid's work is how human and rooted on the ground it always is. And I think that even in this deeply polarized time, reporting that is about real people and conveys what actual people are going through still has the power to really cut through a lot of people's preconceived notions and force change. And to me, that is the lasting power of journalism.
It's challenging, inspiring, and rewarding to wade through all of the nominations and come away with a sense of the ethical hurdles these journalists and finalists had to overcome.
As Shadid Award judges, we get to be among the first to spread the news about the finalists. Well, when I posted the news on social media, almost immediately I received a reply from a veteran journalist who said this: "I wish each entrant could have met Anthony. He knew him." Well, we wish that too, but we know that they did meet Anthony Shadid's highest standards.
What an honor and a pleasure it is to keep advancing the legacy of Anthony Shadid.